don't know if I can remember them all at once, but I think the first thing to understand is that using an environmental call to action, even though we all kind of care about the environment, like if you look at any testing of anyone, it's like over 80 or 90% of people say, yeah, of course I believe that we should have no litter and trees and like, like a nice climate and clean air. Like nobody doesn't really think that. But then you get this thing called the value action gap where we all kind of care about the environment, but then it can be quite hard to distill that concern into people actually doing stuff in the real world, which comes at some sort of cost. Like it's either, your time or your attention or your habit change or a career change, or it's just, it involves some sort of difficulty in some way. So that's where our attitude doesn't necessarily like flow into behavior, which is kind of like where the center of my work is and trying to figure out how to get that to work. But if you look at like how to psychologically tap into people, using an environmental call to action, like do it for the planet, do it because of climate change, is usually the weakest way to motivate people, even though we do care. It's not about caring. It's about like trying to bridge this like extra energy that's required to actually do stuff, like to change habits and stuff, or, spend money on something different. So there's different ways to do that. I would say first thing, just realize that using the environmental call is probably the weakest, but it will be very strong for some people, like maybe 2 or 5% of the population that'll really work on. But then you have all these other different sorts of frames. So one, for example, is being a responsible citizen, like saying, oh, do it because you're responsible. We don't litter because we're responsible. We have an emissions-free home because we're responsible citizens. We're responsible neighbors. We have a water-efficient garden. And so you're using that responsible person, which is a very strong personal identity that people have. People deeply don't want to be irresponsible.
Yeah.